When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello, and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Sachs.
And I'm Lori Sachs. I recorded this conversation with our good friend Maezen last October. And now, as we release it in the new year, what is so apparent to me is how challenges and the unknown and fears and hopes, they're a part of every day. They're an everyday thing that tells our stories. And as we grow, we learn different ways of coping, different ways of dealing and finding our space by just showing up, by having the courage to be present in that moment and trusting our lives. So welcome, Maezen. Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm good.
How-
I think.
Yeah, that's then you're good. It's just you and me today because Steven had he's a Saints fan, and a friend of ours had tickets to see the Saints and knew he was a Saints fan, and he had ticket, and he was so cute. He goes, "Oh, Bob has tickets to the Saints," and I was like, "Well, you're going."
Well, are the Saints playing the Rams? Are the Saints in LA?
Yeah, Chargers. And I was like, well, you're going. And and it was really like, it was, to me, I was just like, there were certain, I don't know, maybe I've grown as a human, and instead of being like, no, we have this at 1:00. And I was just like, this is what today is. This is our first interview back since like basically a year. Today's actually the anniversary of his mom passing. And so it's been like 1 year since we've done an episode. Like, we have not done any episodes this entire year. And I was just like, you know what? We're going to do it differently. Like we're going to do, because we love doing this, but we're going to do it differently, and you go and we'll be okay. I mean, I have this list of instructions of what to do, and the Zoom has been running for 4 hours. It's like
Technical instructions. Okay. Well, no problem.
And I didn't even ask you ahead of time what you wanted to talk about, but I feel like that's the thing. I feel like, meeting life where it is.
So let me tell you where I feel like we are universally, really.
Oof.
Collectively. Yes, I know where we are. And so I'd like to really talk about that. Now, I don't know when this will air, but nonetheless, I think it's applicable for every part of our lives, and, every day and every day after, to really recognize the condition that we find ourselves in and the impact, and then also how to really work. I hate to say work with it because it sounds like work, but how to see it through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So we stop battling, and we find a place of refuge in our lives. That's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I think I could probably, I don't know when I stopped sleeping pretty regularly, this year.
Yeah.
And this year has been, just take a look at your life. I don't have to tell you. There's been such a powerful whirl of energy that both destroys, it causes destruction and damage, and yet at the same time, it marks the beginning of something new. You see that, if we look behind you and we see the beautiful new kitchen that you're in, and of course you can reflect on all of the shocking circumstances, unexpected and unpredictable, that frankly dislodged you from your home and then impacted you psychically and emotionally and physically in all those ways. So I think that we as a as a people. And at this time, we're really anxious
Mm-hmm.
and afraid. And so I think that's just really ripe for us to take a look at and not run away from. It's also the season, you know. I had to turn on the air conditioning today because I wanted to wear something other than black. And in many places, in most places, there's such a thing called fall. And the weather gets cool, you know, and we all pumpkin spice up and things like that. But I do think that we can look at this season, perhaps in our lives and also in the world, as a time when things fall away, and really recognize how to deal with that. So that's what I'd like to talk about.
When you say about this time, you mean just with the election and
But you see that the very same force, you know, this powerful force that is destructive.
mm-hmm.
And we don't even have to identify all the ways that it is destructive, but just take a look at, say, the last 3 months in which, you know, we had really never before have we seen this kind of political change, nor have we seen this kind of climate change, you know, and nor have we seen the kind of the scale of war and conflict that has erupted, you know, essentially all over the world. And so everybody is feeling this effect, I believe. I don't believe unless you're unaware that you feel as though you are on solid ground right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Too much upheaval, too many things are suddenly uncertain. And these are things, frankly, we can even look at history and say, you know, this is a new circumstance, or at least something that we never expected to experience in our lifetime, both in terms of everything from weather, you know, and the impacts, utterly, historic. The loss, you know, the fear, the suddenness, and then of course what we're very focused on right now, which is the outcome of our presidential election. You know, what's funny, Lori, is that, well, it's interesting to me. It may not be funny, but I mentioned to you that I just hosted a retreat in upstate New York, and it's a place that we go every year. And we typically go every year in October, and round about May or June, I have to come up with, you know, some kind of, theme or just a vision for what this retreat is going to deal with and what we're going to call it. And so I found a quote, a Zen quote, that I thought was perfect for both these times and for how we, I'll call it practice, how we deal, how we cope, how we move through, you know, these very chaotic times. And this is an old quote from an old, you know, Zen master, lived in the 13th century. And his quote was, "Amidst the chaos, there is always stillness to be found within." And that really describes, you know, because you've done this, our meditation practice. We sit still and we calm the mind, we steady the breath, you know, and ideally what we do is leave just the chaotic noise, you know, the swirling thoughts and upset, you know, the distractions in our head, and we just be still and quiet for that time. And when I found that, of course, given the time, it was May or June, and it was really the first sign that this election and the outcome of this election was going to be terrifying. I thought, that's perfect for our retreat. We'll do that in October. That'll just be perfect. It'll just be 2 weeks before the election, and then roundabout August, I realized, oh, well, you know, everything's settled out. You know, it's all settled down and it's all going to be fine. Then when we gathered the second week of October, I realized, oh my gosh, no, it really is still chaos. It really is still chaos, and we really are still still dealing with this. When I say deal, there's not much we can do except what we can do. And we do need to make sure, and again, too, I'll tell you that when we find ourselves in such a disruptive environment, you know this, you do something, and maybe it seems like a little thing, you take care of those things that you can take care of, and they themselves help to, for a time, really quell the distress because you're doing something useful and practical, and in your case, you found a new place to live. And other things. I think in the process, probably before you did that, you had to go through the clutter and, the destruction and the impact of where you've been, and then organize a move and this and that and the other. And those are all ways, subtle ways. You may not have realized that you were being given ways to deal with your distress, but those little things. So we always have actions that we can take, we can do things that will help us. And it's always an activity. It's an activity in our practice that is considered transcendent or even enlightenment. We eat, we cook, we clean, we drive the kids to school, we pick things up, we go to work, we do these things can be very powerful, and they're powerful because they're medicine. They're medicine for what we're doing. The other day, I got a call from a bank, one of our financial accounts, and it was just somebody who was going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping, that needed to be done. And we traded calls back and forth. And finally, she called back and I was able to reach her. And I said I was sorry for being unavailable, but that I tried to spend as much time in my backyard as I could, in the garden as I could, just because it kept all of the other noise at bay. All of the other things that I might be inclined to ingest, like opinions, other people's opinions, which I look for somebody who shares my opinion, but I might find something that is contrary to my opinion, which is really troublesome.
Yeah, I think when we stumble upon those, I think like especially in this situation, and bringing it back to our podcast, I think about when you're talking about how things become upside down and you find a thing to do, and like you go into your garden and you're not just leaning into the fear, because the fear is of the unknown, and the unknown, like the good part of the unknown. I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, you know what? It's unknown, but right now I can be hopeful. So I'm going to hold on to hopeful because I want that to be my outcome. And if that's not my outcome, I'm going to deal with it then, because I can't, like, I want to really focus on the hope. I feel so often in life that negative and that hopelessness just steals our focus. And in the time of the unknown, it's unknown, and our hope is other people's, fear. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's like, so I've really tried to dig into the fact that it's unknown, and I have to do everything that I can to create, in my ability, what I want that unknown to become. But I don't want to be robbed of the fact that I can be hopeful right now. And it's not, I've always tried to be hopeful about things. And it's not that I'm ignorant to how horrible life can be or cruel humanity can be to each other, or that, bad things happen and all of that. I know all of that. but I just want to be able to enjoy the hope while there's a chance to have the hope. And when you talk about other people's opinions, I hardly do social media anymore because it's just so much conflict. And I don't like when you have like a very aggressive voice saying things that are not based in fact, but ignorance and propagating fear and just cruelty. I realize it like there's no point in going and trying to educate that. There's no point because there's like a dig in. There's a dig in and it's just like I don't even want to like go to participate. Like even though no matter how in my head I'm like, but I just it's like a matter of discipline to just go, there's nothing I can do to change how I think I can only change me,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
You can only change you. And so let's look at the ways that you can change. First off, Buddha taught that everything begins with a thought. And just look through that so you understand that. If you, like, for instance, I'm going to dust my floorboards today. And you know why? Because I can, and because it gives me that activity and focus on what's right in front of me. But I had that thought first. I haven't yet done it. So I hope I actually do, but everything begins with a thought. And so the nature of your thought determines everything. And through our thoughts, we create the world that we inhabit. And so we have to look at how we think and understand that that has universal impact. It does. And so, yes, you're right. Let's not engage in what is really just a meaningless thought battle with someone in which each side is defending its own point of view. Now, this may be difficult to kind of express. There's another teaching that says, if you wish to be free of the world, be free of the world, the opinions of the world. Be free of the opinions of the world. And you see, opinions are what drag us into conflict and what fuel our conflict and actually what fuel our fear. And sometimes we think that this means let's not pay attention to anybody else's opinions. But whose opinions are the only opinions that you can be free of? Yours. You can't change anybody else's opinion. So I'm not saying don't have an opinion, because we will, but just don't make that the battleground for behavior. So that's really opens up again, and looking through this, the world that we live in is a world that is created by us. If we see a world that's threatening and aggressive and violent and disturbing, we have to change the way we think. And changing the way we think will change the way we behave. And change the way we behave will change the outcomes. I believe that too. It can't be any other way, because the only life I have and the only world I experience is my world. It's my life. So yeah, I go out in the backyard, and there is no conflict. In fact, there is no election, and there is no anything that is disturbing to me. Well, I shouldn't say that. It disturbs me enough. But yeah, we have to be free. We can only free ourselves. And that's not indifference or disregard. It's just recognizing the power that we have. We have to not give away our power. And when we become hopeless and fearful, and we surrender our power when we do that. So that's where I'm at right now. It feels good.
But you have your yard. So how does just the person without that beautiful garden? Like how do they take, and this isn't, because once the election is over, this is like in every challenge in life. How do they how do we go into that place? Because we've had this conversation before when we've spoken about IEPs, when we've spoken about the limits people put on Liam. We've and and but we haven't had the conversation in a little while. So how is it that somebody who's listening, right now, whenever right now is, and whatever that challenge is, whether it be, that's bringing them to that place of a fearful, dreading mind or heart, like how would they do that? Because they have to go sit in traffic, or they have to work in an environment that's not inclusive, or they have they have to participate in this relationship that is, not as uplifting as maybe they'd want.
Well, you might think that it takes a garden to do that, but that's because it's not your garden. The woman I was on the phone with the other day said, "Oh, how lucky you are to be able to have such a beautiful place." And I said, "My reality is it's a lot of work. I don't. It's not like something that relieves me of the burden of taking care of it." So we've talked about this before. What do we do when we are in untenable situations, or when we feel that we're being blocked or unheard, or that it's not going to work out? We take care of what appears in front of us. Because, Lori, is there any other world right now than what appears in front of you?
No.
Is there any other place?
No.
Is there any other time?
Nope.
No.
No.
That's it. And see, when we string together, the imaginary, and judge, what are really abstractions. Well, this could lead to this, or maybe if this happens, then that will happen. And I don't like that. And, if only I could get this to happen. That's all happening in your head. And I know that we've talked about when you have to meet with people that you think don't have Liam's best interest, or when when you go out on the street, or in a store, or in a restaurant, and you have encounters with people, and how do you handle those circumstances? You simply be present in those situations where you are. There's no other place to be, and there's nothing else to do. And I think you have been shocked by how, when you don't carry or expect or create a difficulty, and that there's no difficulty, you will respond appropriately or not. I mean, or have no response. Even not responding is a response. And I've also pointed you to the fact that Liam always will be in a position where he will act and speak appropriately. And so you can use that as your guide. You can use that as your teacher. But it's always going to be the only place that we have our power, and the only place that we have an impact, and the only place where we can affect change is by dealing with what's right in front of us, right in front of us, right in front. Now, that means that sometimes we have to leave our preferences and our ideologies and our philosophies and our desires to the side. There's an aspect of trust. We can call it hope. But in a way, I like trust, because trust is not attached to a certain outcome. It is like a foundation that is always present in life itself. Because I'll point out, every time is a time of not knowing. You never know what's going to happen about anything. You never know. So we're living in this place where we can contrive, understanding and explanations. Well, this is how it's going to go. In fact, that's the whole nature of punditry, or you might say expertise. Always they think this what they're being asked to do is to predict, predict and forecast, but they're just making that up. So deal with what appears in front of you, and you'll think, well, that's not very important, because I really want to deal with the meaty matters, really the big grave issues in front of us. Well, you deal with what's in front of you, and when the grave issue appears in front of you, you deal with it. And when the floods come, you deal with it. And when the mold comes, you deal with it. And when you're in traffic, why don't you just be in traffic? The truth is, you can't be anywhere else. But when we add that layer of judgment to it, and frustration to it, and dislike to it, it becomes not just a chore, it becomes a war.
Yeah, and it takes so much. I think, like, I just looked away because I've learned with you to just be present, but I wanted to revisit like a few things that you said, because one was that you said, which I think is so important, is you said you have this garden and that's like where you go, but it's work. And I think sometimes that message, sometimes I think the message of, uh, finding that peace or being present, I think it gets confused with that's super easy. Like, and you said it just now, you said, well, that garden is work. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, that's a distinction, I think, that we use all the time, and we're really confused by. Actually, we're not confused. I'm always confused when somebody says, I'm going to have a self-care day. And I'm thinking, well, in a way, that's every day. Or I need some me time. And then I'm thinking, is it ever not me time? I mean, I'm always the one here. I mean, really, it's me. But it's as though we can separate an aspect of life that we really want, that we think is going to be special, maybe like a spa day or something like that, from life itself. And life itself contains everything. Your life contains everything. Some things are easy and some things are hard. Some things you like and some things you don't like. But every bit of it, there's nobody except you who can take care of it. Take care of your life. And it's not just going and getting pampered, you see. This is going to sound like it's irrelevant. However, at this last retreat I was at, I talked about commitment. And oftentimes we think of commitment as being a commitment to something outside of yourself. I'm committed to this kind of idea, or I'm committed to this kind of purpose or this kind of mission. And even with people who, sit with me in meditation and I talk about your commitment, they might think, oh, she's expecting us to do this 8 hours a day, and she wants people who are going to, take on these jobs, and she wants people. Well, that's not for me, I just need a little bit of this. And I corrected them and I said, commitment applies to everything you do. For instance, I had just entered into our meditation hall the first night, and we never wear shoes inside the hall. We take them off. And I had walked by this long line of shoes that looked like they had just been kicked off and, were kind of all a jumble, and there were just shoes everywhere. I said, for instance, I just want you to know that every time you walk into this Zendo, every time you walk into this room, you're committing. Every time you take off your shoes and you put them down, you're committing to those shoes. Make a commitment to those shoes. Don't just discard them. Why don't you place them neatly, as though you respected them? That's commitment. Every time you sit down on a cushion, that's commitment. Every time you take a breath, that's commitment. You are committing to the current moment, the present moment. You're committing to yourself and your life. Every time you're awake and you keep your eyes open and focus, you are committing to everything that you see. So when you do that, instead of think, well, that's just not important, and we say that about what constitutes, Lori, the whole of our life. every aspect of your life. Why judge some things to be worth your time and some things not to be worth your time? Why judge some things to be, needing to be done now and not needing to be done now? Take care of everything that's currently in your life. I mean, I can look behind you and I see how you have these beautiful stools sitting behind you, and you put them back, you tuck them in. Now, admittedly, sometimes they're probably not like that. But can you take a minute and every time you get out of one of those stools and just put it back where it goes? You see, put it back where it goes. Everything, we can call it work. I used to make this distinction. We call work what some children call play.
Mm-hmm.
We think, cleaning the kitchen is work, and they play, and they're playing in the yard and they're playing here. And then they, all of this role playing that is done in childhood, we would call it work, but they call it play. And you see, it's just a switch like this. Work is like drudgery, or work is a chore, or work is an effort, we say. But a child wouldn't say that. And you're an actor. So yes, your work is work, but it's also play, you see. Yeah, and so you can see that. But that's the distinction that we have to see through, how our definitions limit and maybe even disparage what constitutes the greater part of our lives. We sit in traffic. Why is that a problem? It's just a fact. But we judge it as though someday we're going to be driving in California, in LA, and there's not going to be traffic. And we would call that a good day. Yeah, you see what I mean? So yeah, it all comes down to you, where you are as you are, and being completely present and not filtering or shading or not we call it defiling that with your judgment of whether it's worth your time, whether it's enjoyable or not, whether it's what you want or not. You see, it all comes from your thoughts and your judgments. Yeah, I can't convince anybody else. Everybody else that I know thinks that it would just be such a religious, mystical, marvelous, profound experience to rake leaves and pull weeds. And it's work.
When you were saying that about just being like committing to every minute, that's just being present. I right? You're talking about like actually like if like we're sitting here and we're talking and I'm not thinking about the things that I still need to unpack. I'm not like,
yes,
it's like,
but also let's say that when you're there in your kitchen. So I'm always going to bring this up. I'm sure that you don't have any dishes in your sink, but if you did have dishes in your sink, could you commit to them? To taking care of those dishes? To loading them in the dishwasher or to washing them? You see, that's really a commitment on your part. You're saying, this is my life. I'm committed to my life. I can take care of my life. It's worth my time. It's me. It's really me. And how I do anything is frankly how I do everything.
all time is me time. If it's your life, every time is me time. And why? Because I've heard that, like I've heard this before, and I really take it into like when I do have to, when I am cleaning and stuff. So it's not like, oh, I have to clean. One, I'm happy I have something to clean, but also I think like Louise May Alcott said that housework is a meditation. Like that's like meditate. And so and I'm sure many people have said that, like, that's like a time, like you're going to do your floorboards. You'll be there and present. Right. And I try to bring that into things that normally might not be something that would that's like I don't know, like most people would rather get their nails done maybe than wash the dishes or fold the laundry. But you're saying that that's just how I'm viewing it. That's just
Yes.
a what is that thing that you put, a filter Can we filter everything with, I'm folding this blouse. I bought this blouse for me, and this is my blouse, and this is me time. This blouse is,
See, you're making it, you're adding extra to it.
am I adding extra? Am I putting some sauce on it?
It's extra.
It's
It's extra.
extra.
Yeah, don't even think about it.
Don't even think. But do you feel, because you said about me time, and I think that that was so like mind blowing to me, is that we really do say, "Oh, I'm going to get a little me time. Oh, this weekend I went and did some me time." But just saying that your whole life is me time, your whole life.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that your whole life has to be something that you get sentimental or romantic about, or that, it's just that I never leave my life. I'm here in my life 24/7. And, I know that we say me time and it means I'm getting away from everything that I don't like, and I'm doing what I want to do. And I understand that. And perhaps we shouldn't call it me time, because all time is me time. And whether I like it or hate it, want it or don't want it, do it or not do it, whether I, blame somebody else, it's not my job. I mean, just, you see the kind of conversation we have with ourselves about what essentially is our life, that we don't want this in our life. I want the life that doesn't have these things that I don't want in it. And all I can say is good luck with that. I mean, really, good luck with that. Because life contains everything and everyone. But we can change how we view that. Essentially, what we have to change is we have to think that all of this crappy stuff is happening because of some crappy other person. All this mess, all this trouble is because of some messy, troublesome other person. And believe me, I fall into that. I fall into that too. I fall into that. But yeah, every moment of your life is you. Now, what do you consist of? Everything. Everything's in it. There's birth and death, and there's love, and there can be hate, and there's change, and there are measurements that we call days and months and years, and there's what we call the past, and there's what we call the future. But Lori, you will never leave your life. And so, whoa, that's both a gift and it's a commitment. Can I commit to my life instead of wanting a divorce from my life, wanting an escape from my life? You don't replace your disgust or unhappiness or your despair with happy talk. You just take care of things. No, you take responsibility.
I feel like people only get that insight when they experience a loss or a challenge. I feel like that's when you see, that's when people get very like attuned to the fact that every moment is so precious, and everything and every human and everything we do.
I agree with you. That's why this time on earth, full of opportunity. It's full of opportunity. One of the members that practices with me was at this last retreat, gratefully, because he lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And it was just 2 weeks out from the massive storm that had really destroyed a big swath of North Carolina. And at the time he came to retreat, he still had no power. The city was hobbled, and there was just still so much work to do. But he came, and I asked him to give a talk about how through practice is what we would call his practice, that he handled that. And so he did. Essentially, what he said was that there was this terrible. He said the events were so, the scale of them was so massive that nobody, without any information and with no power and no communication, they had no idea really what had happened, except that as they tried to leave their home, they could find every street blocked, by fallen trees. So that's, and just this utter kind of paralyzing disorientation. But when he and his partner were able to get out, they just were looking for other people. They were looking for other people. So either through people who needed help or people who had help, or just there was this profound need to gather in community and to help one another. Because you see, an event like that destroys all of the false divisions that we carry with us and all of the judgments of our neighbors and other people. Suddenly, that was none of that was meaningful or relevant. And finally, he said that it was the churches where members had gathered and they had supplies to hand out. And so he simply walked up to a parking lot at a church and said, "Can I help?" And they said, "Well, yeah, just there's a long line of cars of people coming in. Just greet people as they come in and see what it is they need." So he thought, okay. And then he said, "Well, my Zen teacher has always been telling us, to just take care of what's in front of you." And so he said that one by one, as the cars came in, he didn't look at bumper stickers. He didn't judge people when they rolled down their window. They were all in the same place and they were all at the same time. And all of them had the same experience. And he said what he realized is that, yes, some people needed food and some people needed water and some people, but mostly what people needed was someone to see them and someone who would listen to them. And it was an amazing experience, he says, for him. These are people that he would have never met on the street, at least not eye to eye. And they might have had nothing that they could agree on, or talk about. And yet he realized underneath all of this false, kind of caricature and these personas that we put on and, the warfares, the wars we fight with one another, there is this common element. And Lori, this is common not just in all people, but in all beings, all places and all times. To just see without judgment one another and deliver spontaneously, intuitively, what is needed. He didn't have water to hand out, but he had an ear to lend. And that was the most important thing. And he came back and he told everybody else, this practice works.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the change in people when they are seen and they're not judged. And when we step forward instead of backwards, that's what we have to do. Now, that's what we have to do, Lori, as you know, in every situation, with all people. Whether you're in an IEP meeting or, wherever you are, with all of these matters that you deal with. And you can't walk in with an agenda. Well, you might walk in with an agenda. You need to walk in with an open ear and a clear mind and meet people where they're at. That's called service, but actually it's not a special thing. It's very rare, and particularly now in our culture and in our lifestyle, to actually have encounters.
I remember when you told us the story of Buddha, and every day he would wake and eat what was given and, do everything was right, what was in that day. And I would love to say that that comes naturally to me every day. But I work to do that. And I especially feel the need and I'm reminded to do it when I'm in a situation that like my mind is kind of taking over or, things get overwhelming or anxiety. I remember to just be like with whoever I'm with or what is the day going, what is the day in front of me? And especially over the last, couple months, they've been challenging. And I can look back at it and, like you said, like we could sum it up. But the thing that helped is like you could ask Stephen and Sophia and Liam. Sometimes I'd be like, so I'm going to be in today because that's what I have. That's all I can do is right now. That's all I can do. And it really helped and it helped carry me to the next, or even just to every moment of that day. Because when you're in the situations where people are disappointing you or just, just like life is just like this, in my mind, like this isn't what it's supposed to be. This isn't how we're supposed to treat each other. This isn't like I try to be an honest person and dishonesty like really takes its toll on me and and I but I can't change what other people are doing. I can't do anything, but the only thing I could do was just be there. I could just be there. That was literally all my energy was just I'm not even going to think about where it leads or think about how I feel about it. I'm just going to be right here. I'm just going to be right here. And so many times I would just say that like, you know, trying to figure and people do this on a daily basis in the world. What am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to get them something to eat? Where are they going to sleep tonight? Like this is something on a very large scale. I'm highly aware that this is what people have as a real challenge every day. And that is humbling and that is sobering because even in something that even though it wasn't as temporary as I wanted it to be or it didn't feel temporary at times, there was a little bit of that knowing that we were going to get through this, but still the day was really hard. Um, and it was that was just I just that was a story that I just carried with me every day of like this is what we're going to do. And with anybody else in my family who got overwhelmed and you can see it and I just say we're just going to be right here. What do we want to do with right here? What do we want to do with right now? In this moment. And the moments do become the next moments and the next moments and the next moments. But that brought a peace to it as we were experiencing it.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's where peace is. Peace is actually in the moment that you're in. Now, be careful what you add to it because that disrupts the peace. And what we add to it is just our judgment. And we might call it frustration or anger, impatience. We add to it. I told a story recently with some folks about something that happened in my practice life. Well, when I say practice life, I could say my whole life. But when I first started going to a Zen center and practicing, in retreat, which is really arduous and kind of on first exposure, you think, well, this is all upside down. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Later on, you realize that it's not crazy, that your life is crazy and that you're trying to become uncrazy by doing this. So in any event, this was a retreat in a city where a new Zen center had just been built. And I don't know, it may have been my first year of practice or maybe my second year. I don't know, but I was certainly still new. And I really had no idea what I was doing. Let me say that. So because this new place had been built, the teacher there, or the abbot, had invited the local newspaper, and it was a big city, had invited a newspaper to come and cover the fact that this Zen center or Zen temple had been built. And so a reporter came in, and we were all of us who were participating in the retreat, sat in our spots. And her question was, why are you doing this? Why are you here? What brings you, here? And various people went around the room and professed, for their part, what was the motivation or the circumstance, or what was the reasoning behind them participating in this practice or taking on this practice. And at some point, I think I raised my hand, or maybe I was called on, but I really didn't know how to answer that question. How did I get here? Without kind of embellishing and creating a story about it. And so all I could say was, this is where my life has led me, and I trust it. Can we ever say that to ourselves, no matter what the circumstance, no matter whether things are going smoothly or they're not going smoothly, whether we're in the company of, a pleasant situation or an unpleasant situation, where we like the people that we're talking to or we don't like them, where we get our way or we don't get our way. This is where my life has led me. And, if we look backwards, and we don't judge, we say, my gosh, I've been on this path, and one moment leads to the next, and one step leads to the next, and one day leads to the next. And how did I end up here? In a way, I didn't have anything to do with it. This is how it unfolded. And the question is, can we, maybe for lack of any other idea, any other kind of understanding, say that about our life? This is where my life has led me, and I trust it. Now, that doesn't mean, when I say I trust it, it doesn't mean that it's going to work out, or trust it that it's going to be great, or trust it that it's going to do whatever. It's just trusting how it is, and knowing that that's impermanent, that's going to move, and things are going to change. May becomes June, and June becomes August, and August becomes October, and November and December. One year just flows into the next. This is where my life has led me, and I trust it. That's called trusting the unknown. Trusting what you don't know.
And I like that you say trust instead of hope. I do. I like that. I like that a lot, because it's a different place, but the same kind of, I guess trust has hopefulness in it, but it's also just, I don't know. I like that. I like that you say trust, because then it's not, like for me, I feel like when I was saying hope, then what do I do if I'm disappointed? Then that hope is kind of, but if it's trust, it's like, oh, I might be disappointed, but now I'm at this place and I'm going to trust. I think that honestly, that just even the path, with Liam, that's been very helpful at just saying, this is all right. This is where we are, and this is what we're gonna be here, and we're gonna trust. When you say that, like, this is where my life has led me, and I trust it, but then you've participated in that path, no? Like you've participated in some way in where it's unfolded to, or gone the direction in which it's led?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, we are frankly, the primary participant all the
Yeah.
time in our lives. And you see, I can see the way you're thinking, that you don't want to, you want to look back and say, well, it wasn't my responsibility, or it wasn't my choice, and I didn't have anything to do with it. And that's a whole nother story that we can concoct, instead of just looking at your life in its undifferentiated form. In other words, without saying, well, this part of my life was good, and I'll hold on to that part. But otherwise I was a victim and I was mistreated and this and that again. Nonetheless, it's still your life. My life has led me here, and I trust it. You see, and I agree with you about the kind of very subtle coloration that there is in hope, because I think hope oftentimes is used and it's attached to a certain outcome.
Yeah.
And here we're saying we don't know what the outcome's going to be. But, without trust, or we might say faith, it's more like faith. Without trust in yourself, you can't have any trust in your life. And without faith in yourself, you can't have any faith in your life, because you're the only one there. Yeah. So, all kinds of things happen. I mean, I remember writing, I think it was in the first book, Maezen. I mean, you start to realize I can't make a perfect life. I can't make a perfectly safe life. I can't make a life that has all of these things that I think are paramount to instill in my child. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't, and then you realize that the whole thing is an act of faith. Or you could say the whole thing is an act of trust. And I'll also say that without trust and faith, we become very susceptible to the most really negative and dire, fearful, anxious states of mind, because we don't have any faith in ourselves. We don't have any trust in ourselves. So we look, for some kind of
Someone to fix it.
right, exactly. And who will promise to fix it for us, or who will give us that kind of assurance that I can fix it for you. One of the things that's just, kind of so shocking, it has been for me, and then as I work with people, I was kind of shocked that whenever I would, in working with a teacher, I felt myself wanting to actually give the teacher, here, my life, tell me what to do. Here's my life, tell me what will work. Here's my life, I'll surrender, to your authority. And invariably, the teacher gives me your life. I can't do that. Only you can do that. I have nothing to teach you. I don't have any advice for you except to do your practice. And you see, we say, gosh, what is that practice? Well, it's not like swim practice, and it's not like, piano practice, except that repetition does improve, your performance and your, the outlook. Our practice is simply the practice of being present. And when we're fully present, all possibilities are included. Infinite possibilities. The flip side of a time of not knowing, or a time of unknowns, is infinite possibilities. Why am I just focusing on what I think is the best, thing that I want, or it has to turn out like this, when anything can happen at any time? And our participation in that really profound responsibility, taking profound responsibility, changes how we live. I don't want to add one little inch, one little bit, one little iota of negativity, of cynicism, of judgment, fear, because that too, just the tiny little bit, it just enters and creates this ocean that overwhelms us. All the worry, all the doubt, all the fear. Fear is not a hard sell. It's the basic ground of ego. And it's easy to become afraid, very easy. And if we stop and think about, we would be scared to death all the time. But we have to see what that, it's kind of like poison has an impact. It's a poison. So can we enter the moment? And we don't have to say this, We just have to keep our mind empty and free. My life has brought me here. My life has led me here. And I trust it. That's kind of like opening a door, opening a window, to what is infinite and loving and good. So this, Lori, is how I'm getting through these days.
I really try because I always say I love, but I do because I love my conversations with you. Just when my life has led me here and I trust it, and then you brought it around to, and I trust myself and trusting in yourself, and just how it just completely builds into the commitment to your life and just the power, that's inside of you. Because I'm going to be 100% honest. Like my relationship with you, when I first met you, and you're smarter and wiser and been practicing and all of these things. And even just when we were talking at the beginning, I'm like, yes, you put those were the words I was searching for. It is so easy to just all of a sudden just go, all right, Maezen's going to have the right words for me. Maezen is going to tell me what I need to do. And Maezen is going to somehow validate any of those stories in my life. She's going to tell me something. It's going to make sense. Now, from the moment we've met, you actually just the thoughts of going into an environment and not bringing the past in and being present with how we'll see. I say that so often. We'll see. Let's see. But there was a moment, and it was really, and I can't remember the conversation, where I just was like, I just said in my head, the realization, I was like, Maezen is a person. Maezen she's not gonna, Lori, she's not gonna wave a wand and all of a sudden anything that didn't make sense, or any doubts I had about myself, or, any whys or any of those things. Like I realized in the moment, and I think really what you've solidified today is that, like, our life has guided us and we trust where it's going, and to trust in ourselves and just being present, and even how we're creating. Like, you don't want to give just the little tiny bit to that negative and fear. It was a really profound realization and lesson that it's like, yeah, my life is my responsibility and my commitment to me. And it took me a long time to get to that, because you want someone to come in and fix it. I mean, I do. I want someone to come in and honestly, when Liam was born, and the outcome and the things people said and the challenge and the fighting for his everything, and like I'm like, somebody please come take this weight off my heart. But it wasn't until I participated, until I just trusted and started to trust and saw my child. And all of those things really do profoundly just they've profoundly changed the trajectory. So when you say this is my life, and I trust, and my life has brought me here, but all of those things have also changed the trajectory of that and the experience of that. And for that, I'm grateful for all the lessons that you've shared, because it has brought me here. And being here has it's just empowered. I guess it's empowering. Does that make sense?
Well, sure, because sometimes we feel like we don't have any power, that we're simply on the receiving end of, intermittent good luck, that is always interrupted by bad luck, or good things, and then a very, most of the time it's bad. But what we're really talking about is like an inside out thing or an upside down thing. In other words, most of the time, I mean, what seems like our natural perspective is that I am under attack, or I am a victim, or I am powerless, or I am, to outside forces, outside things that are happening, outside individuals, outside circumstances that, so forth and so on. But Buddha said that the teaching essentially can come down to one thing. We turn the thinking upside down, or we turn the thinking inside out, so that we simply don't perceive ourselves as being afflicted by things beyond our control. We don't see ourselves as being powerless, or being impotent, or invisible, or nobodies. Instead, recognizing that we are sitting at the center of our lives always. We're in the center here, and we have this 360-degree radius, you see. And that, in essence, we're sitting on a throne, or we are the emperor, or we are the king, or we are the queen, or this is our, we could say, country, or life, or world. And how will we live? How will we treat this? Do we feel like this is, we're at war, and we're in enemy territory, and we're on the front lines of a battle? That's very different than recognizing that you're sitting in the center of a universe that's called your life, and that you are the pilot. You are totally in charge, and you're totally responsible. Yeah, it's like the difference between top and bottom, inside and out, high and low. There's a funny line from a Zen teacher. Once we realize how much responsibility we truly have, naturally, we sit down for a while. We have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of possibilities. We have a lot of time in one sense, and in another sense, we don't have a lot of time. So to make peace, we have to make peace. And it's always available. It's always present in the moment that we're in. We simply have to stop fighting.
I love you.
Are we done?
Never. We're never done.
For the time being. For the time being.
I love you, Maezen. I'm so happy to see your face.
I'm happy to see you.
I love you.
Bye.
Right.
Love
Bye.
you.
See you later.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.